The following broadcast is intended for mature audiences. These are real people sharing very real, deeply personal experiences. This content may be considered triggering for others and for those who are sharing. The chat room is a privilege intended for discussions and sharing. You are not being asked to agree, but you are being asked to stay civil and refrain from personal attacks. Listener discretion is advised. All right, thank you for tuning in. This is Am I Mental? I am E. This is a mental health podcast where real people share real experiences live over the air about living their lives with mental health issues. Tonight, for some unknown reason, we do not have the co-host KZ. I'm hoping that everything is okay. Things have been kind of crazy in this area lately, and he does live in the same area that I'm in. But tonight, we do have our guest. We have A. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, this is A. Am I coming through okay?
Yeah, I see you're coming through fine.
All right. So I'll start off just by letting everybody know I preemptively dropped some bullet points of what I'll be talking about today and some links and resources for those subjects. I wanted to do it right in the beginning of the show so someone coming back later doesn't have to sift through chat to find it, and they can know what this episode's going to be about. So, namely, we're going to go over some things that have affected me, and for better or worse, they are part of who I am. That's going to be borderline personality disorder, particularly quiet borderline personality disorder, bipolar 2, addiction and alcoholism, a little bit of body dysmorphic disorder, PTSD, childhood sexual abuse, HSP, which stands for highly sensitive person, general miscellaneous resources that I found helpful throughout my life, EMDR and DBT. Those are two forms of treatment plans for bipolar and borderline personality disorder.
And one thing I wanted to throw out there before we really get diving into this too much is that this episode may be a longer than normal episode. A made it very clear that in order for him to be a guest, this has to be done properly with a proper wrap-up at the end, which, of course, I agreed to. So we may be going a little bit longer than what you're used to. Just a forewarning.
Thanks. So I'm going to drop off of the Am I Mental chat room for now because I think there might be a bit of feedback or some such thing. So,
yeah. There
we go.
And thank you for dropping all those resources up front. That was really awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And, take your time. Everyone take your time going through that. There's a lot of links in there. I hope they find it as helpful as they have been for me. So where do we begin?
Probably the beginning.
The beginning, okay.
If you're down for that, if you're comfortable with it. I know this is a really sensitive subject.
Sure. Yeah. So my earliest childhood memory was a fun one. That was actually me maybe like a year and a half in cloth diapers because my parents were hippies. And I remember thinking, hey, what's that hole in the wall there? And I bet my bobby pins can fit in there, my little diaper pins. And so I waddled over to one or crawled over and I took off the purple dolphin I had on my right hip and I stuck it in there and found out that's an electrical outlet.
Oof.
And I remember that. And my mom never told that story to anyone. And when I recalled it, she was just gobsmacked and it was like, holy crap, I never told anybody that because I didn't want to think I'm a bad mother. But yeah, that happened. And
well, I backed my butt into a space heater, so I had a grill mark on my ass for a while.
So a little bit of levity before we jump into the real topic here. My secondhood child memory started when I was around 2.5 or 3 years old, and it was being sexually assaulted by my father, my biological father, and it continued on from the age of 2.5, maybe 3, till I was about 10 years old. And I had buried those memories pretty well until my 19th birthday-ish. And then I started. Um, oh, and Eric, go ahead and monitor the chat. And if anybody has any questions, of course, I'll answer them when I can come to a pausing place.
Name
But
drop.
oh fuck! And I even said I wasn't gonna do it. I'm so sorry.
Don't worry about it. It happens all the time. So far, we just have a bunch of highs and good or good evenings and how's it going.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll let you know. I'll listen because there's always little natural breakpoints where you're gathering your thoughts. That's usually a good time to.
Sure. So, yeah. So those memories didn't resurface until I was about 19, and I was beginning to have the same dream every single night in vivid detail, and it was endless. It was every single time I closed my eyes, and it was the same dream, and that's all I would dream. And the events were identical every time. And this had been going on for several months, and I was more and more concerned. And it came around holiday time where I went home and had to sit down with Mom and talked to her at length about these disturbing, vivid dreams that I was having. And before I was even done with the dream, and the details of the dream doesn't matter because we're going to get into that later, but she started to cry hysterically, and I kind of took that as confirmation that these weren't dreams, they were memories. And that's when I opened Pandora's box, and I found this chest that I had locked away for my own well-being, and uncovered it, and had no choice but to address it. So that's when the journey began.
But that takes some real strength to do that, though.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was whether I was ready for it or not. My mind couldn't hold it back anymore.
Yeah, it was forcing the issue. It sounds like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I noticed the dream was a just real for real replay of, I think, that first memory over and over until its completion, when the end of the memory ends up, my mother comes home early from work, hears me screaming in the shower with my biological father, and she comes in and sees what's happening, and she pulls me away from him, and all I remember is the gut-wrenching scent of well, I mean, can we say name brands here? I mean, this is just, it is what it is. I'm not trying to like slam the company, but there's a specific hand lotion brand.
I don't really see a problem with that. It is what it is.
Okay.
And if it does cause problems, we'll deal with it if problems come.
Sure. Okay. So to this day, the sight of the bottle, and especially the fucking smell of Vaseline hand lotion, makes me retch. Like, it gives me shakes. It gives me hot and cold sweats. Fight or flight kicks in really strong. So to this day, that scent makes me retch. And what I remember most is, of course, the smell, because it's our strongest memory sense we connect to. And the blouse my mom was wearing mixed with her perfume and the earrings she was wearing, because I had a death grip on all of that and wasn't letting go. And then when she left the bathroom, that's when the memory ends. And then it's just from the age of like 3 to 10, most of my childhood is blocked out. I remember a few flash memories, but that's it. Probably 80% bad, 20% good. And
That's all right.
I had, from my early 20s when I started to uncover this till now being 37, I've dug through it a lot. I've dealt with it. I've addressed it. It's still uncomfortable, but now I don't go catatonic when I talk about it. And all the while, I've never really thought about the fact that my mom stayed with him for like 17 years after that. You know, I was I think I was like 17 or 18 or something like that. 15 years, I guess. Uh, I was 17 or 18 when they finally got divorced, and besides the constant womanizing and alcoholism and abuse uh, across the whole family, um, I think the straw that broke the camel's back was he started to target my nephew. When I was 15, I had a nephew born, and he was right around the same age, like 3 or 5, when my biological father started targeting my nephew. And my sister came home from early work again. She's a nurse, so she works crazy hours, and she was called off that day. And she came home, and he was beginning to do like groom playing. So if you know about adult predators who prey on children, there's this thing called grooming, where they start to make fun little games to make certain behaviors okay. And it's a way to slowly brainwash the child into what is to come is going to be okay. It's what's done. And she saw it for what it was, made a report, a police report. I think he packed all his shit and left the house in like 48 hours because the rest of the family was literally going to kill him. A lot of us are like small town folk or country folk, so a lot of us have farms and backhoes and like acreage, and it was better for him if he left. So,
you don't mess with country folk.
Yeah. So at the same time, the house kind of went into absolute chaos, and I brought it up to my mom again when I was 19, because shit, maybe that's what triggered it. I didn't really even trace out the timeline until now, because I was 17 or 18 when that happened, and then my memories resurfaced when I was 19, a year later. So
that may have been a catalyst.
It could have been, yeah.
Just slowly worming its way in.
Yeah, didn't even realize that. But suffice it to say, the next 2 years was kind of tumultuous for everyone, and Mom kicked everyone out of the house for her own reasons, and I had no place to go but to live with my biological dad. And the dream started there, and I was never comfortable around him. Just after the age of 10 to whenever, I think psychologically or subconsciously I probably knew. But yeah, I lived with him for I think a year or two, and sometime in between is when the dream started again. And it was 20 or 21 when I moved with, at the time, my first serious long-term girlfriend, and I moved up north and hadn't seen him since then. For a long time, I hated him and despised him, and even, wished the worst upon him. But if you ask me now, I'm fairly indifferent. I stayed up in the North California for a few years till I was like 24 or something. Then I had a psychotic break, and it was partially due to recovering all these memories, being diagnosed with bipolar disorder, being diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which I'll get into in a minute.
Also,
went through a horrible.
Really fast, Bexy's just wants you to know that she is sending you loads of hugs and love right now.
Thank you, Bex. So got really bad into alcohol, and I still battle that to this day, which is funny because all the way up till 24 or 25-ish, when I used that for my self-medication, I despised alcohol. Even rebellious teenager Adam, I didn't drink. I didn't get shit-faced. I hated everything about alcohol because my bio father was a raging alcoholic. and it just turned me off. But I found I have a genetic propensity to use that for my self-medication, and um, it worked well for many years until it no longer became an option for me, and I'll get to those hospitalizations later. But I was about 24-ish when I had my psychotic break, and I was in the California Conservation Corps at the time. And I decided that day after work I was going to go to sleep, get some rest, have a nice big breakfast, and then go back to my hometown and kill my father and then kill myself. And I had no intention on hiding it. I had no intention on getting away with the murder. And the only reason why I didn't drive that night was because I was too damn tired, and I thought I'd probably fall asleep at the wheel and die before my mission. So out of the blue, my biological brother calls me and just said, hey, yeah, I just kind of felt I should call you. And he never calls me, ever. And him being a, silver-tongued devil, he can talk anyone into or out of anything he wants. He kind of got it out of me. And he said, I understand the hate that you have right now. And believe me, I have it too. And I'm not asking you to not go through with it. I'm only asking you to wait 6 or 7 hours. And I said, that's fine. I'm going to bed as soon as we hang up. And he was in Sacramento at the time. And in 4.5 hours, he was able to make it to Redding, then Eureka. And he picked up my mom. And anybody who knows that distance or knows that road from Sacramento to Redding to Eureka, that's at least a 6-hour drive. He made it in 4.5 hours.
Yeah, the drive out to Eureka is windy, mountainous, forested highway. It's an ugly drive. The Sacramento to Redding, that's pretty quick. It's a straight shot on an interstate.
Yeah. But no matter which way you go, it's 6 hours, and he must have been flying. But he made it, and they omitted me. They took me out of the 3Cs and said, we're going to have a doctor check you out. And I was non-responsive at the time anyway, so I just kind of followed like a robot, and then realized once the double doors closed where I was, and I was like, oh, shit. They said I was going to be there for a 50-150, which is a 72-hour hold to make sure you're not a danger to yourself or others, which I definitely was.
Hey, I know that. I had one of those.
Yeah, and then if you stay longer than 72 hours, it becomes a 52-50. And that length of stay could be whatever the doctors deem fit. I don't remember much of my stay, but I know I was there for over a week. And I remember flash memory because they kept me heavily sedated. And eventually they let me go, and they gave me the choice of going back to Redding with my mom or Sacramento with my brother. And the way I saw it, anybody who lives in Redding or passed through Redding or knows of Redding knows that it's a void. It's an endless abyss that if you get stuck there, you're just gonna fucking die there, and it's terrible.
Yeah. The song "Stuck at Lodi Again" should have been "Stuck in Redding Again."
Yeah.
Although Lodi's pretty bad. We do have some comments here. Ivania said, I can't imagine the pain that resurfaced at such a young and impressionable age. As if being a teenager isn't difficult enough. Big hugs, sweetheart.
Thank you, Ivana.
May said it was synchronicity, which I was thinking is more serendipity about your brother calling at the right time. Brandy said, damn, May again, he was flying his angel wings to you. And then D, this reminds me of my own horrors.
Yeah. I could imagine. Yeah, I mean, the comment of serendipitous, I've never really been one to buy into like fate per se, or faith for that matter, but something was up that day because he never ever calls, and then just to call it like 11 o'clock at night out of the blue for no reason, I guess that's something there. But the way I saw it, Redding would have been 2 steps back, not only to go live with mother again, but live in Redding. So I figured live with my brother in Sacramento, start anew. And that's kind of what brought me here. And that I think, how long have I been here now? What, 14 years? Something like that?
That sounds. I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't meet you right away.
Yeah. Yeah. I was here for a little bit before you met me. But yeah, so that kind of dumped me into the Sacramento area, freshly diagnosed with all this stuff, and no friendship circle, just the family member. And started from scratch because I literally had nothing but like a bag full of clothes. And jumped forward a couple years, a lot of alcoholism in between, and just trying to survive, and making it through whatever I can, and honestly just merely surviving, not thriving, no direction in the future, just day-to-day survival, and coming to terms with all of that being dumped on me with they didn't send me any resources to Sacramento. They just said, here's what we labeled you as, good luck, bye. And it's kind of a swirl of just foggy memories.
Yeah, healthcare in this country is in desperate need of help.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what we're doing here today, and with this podcast, and that's why I'm so on board about it. And if we don't get to everything today, and we need to cut it because it's too late in the day, then maybe in season 3 I can come back and finish. I don't know. It's up to you.
Yeah, not a problem. Or we can even do like a bonus random day. I just shoot out notifications. Hey, we're going to do like a Tuesday or Wednesday or Saturday or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We'll make it.
So work. I self-medicated a lot with alcoholism, and got really into self-mutilation, cutting specifically. And I don't want to glorify it or romanticize it, but the release I would feel when I was cutting was better than any drug I've ever had. It calmed me. It made me feel safe. It made me feel like it made me feel like there was like a comforting, trusting, longtime friend there. Like I actually literally felt a second presence with me. Like that I was like, okay, that whatever entity that is next to me, that's security right there. And I haven't cut in a while, except for a couple of weeks ago. I did it again, and I felt that tinge of like, hey, remember me? I was pretty into it in my early 20s and mid 20s, and then I kind of fell out of it. Tried it again in my late 20s, and it didn't do anything for me, and I was kind of pissed. A good friend of mine made the joke, yeah, it sucks when your old habits don't cut it anymore, huh? So
yeah, well, dark humor is part of the whole territory.
Yeah. So yeah, and then I did it a couple weeks ago again, and it wasn't nearly as good as it used to be, but I felt just a little bit of relief. So that's been on my mind, and I'm not afraid of the scars. I'm not afraid of people knowing. It's a lot better than some other destructive behaviors, like alcoholism, of which I've been hospitalized several times before, 3 or 4 times in the emergency room, because I was going through DTs, shakes, hallucinations, uncontrollable muscle spasms, like more than just the shakes or tremors. Like my body was not my own to control. And after like the 4th or 5th time of that, I've tried everything else. I tried kicking on my own. I tried kicking with friends. I tried moderation, which for me is not a thing. I cannot do moderation. When I start drinking, I go until I'm blacked out. I'm not a big guy, and I'm not a small guy either. I'm just pretty average, like 185, 5'11", and I can drink probably more than most anybody around me, even dudes that are like 300 pounds and 6.5 feet tall. Twice my dog Stitch, name drop. My dog Stitch saved me when I was full on blackout on my floor and not breathing. He bit me awake twice, and he never bites anything because he's a beta good boy. But
Oh yeah, he's the sweetest good boy.
yeah, and I crawled my way to the bathroom and forced myself to throw up and looked in the mirror, and again twice I was so far gone I was hypoxic. My lips were blue, my finger nail cuticles were blue, my eyes were completely petechia, like the blood vessels had burst. Um, so I was probably not breathing for several minutes, and
You might want to go into detail about how long you were drinking before you got to this point, like on this binge.
oh yes, good point. So my type of alcoholism is I'm a binger. I don't drink every day. I'm not a maintenance drinker. I'll go months. My normal cycle is 6 months to 9 months to a year, and then I will binge for a week straight, and I'll plan it too, because a lot of addiction is also about the ritual itself. And I'll save up time for work. I'll save up sick time. I'll plan it. I'll um, find a way to get everything I'll need for this binge I know I'm going on that usually lasts a minimum of 3 days to, you know, I think the most I did was like 6 or 7. And it's not that I drink and stop because I ran out of days that I saved to go off of work. It's because my body literally shuts down and the natural homeostasis stops because I've drank myself into like a coma or poison. So it's not by my own will that I stop those binges. It's biological, and I've done this quite a few times. And I'd plan it out. I'd also go radio silent. So anytime friends don't hear from me for like a week straight under any forms, they always, um, barrage me with calls and emails and texts and stuff. Hey, are you okay? Are you alive? Are you drinking? That sort of thing.
We love you, man.
And it's meticulously planned out. I'm a very responsible binge alcoholic. I will prep my meals, and I even cooked while I was belligerently drunk, which is probably not good, but I do it anyways. I don't drive. I buy all the alcohol and food and resources I'm going to need for however long my binge lasts. The one conviction I have that's stronger than my alcoholism is refusal to be inebriated in any way and drive, because one of my very good friends' mom was killed in high school by a drunk driver, so I'm very much against that. So that's probably saved me too, because I'm sure I probably would have gotten in a car wreck and died.
Yes.
Yeah.
So far right now, the chat room, a lot of recapping about how bad the healthcare system is. Richard is a first-time live broadcast listener. He says this is such a terrifying real-life story. He's on the edge of his seat. And then, again, May is sending hugs with a sad emoji.
Yeah.
And I welcomed Richard to the live show. Said, "This is how it is, man. This is how the shows go."
Welcome, Richard. I am glad that I can break in so vehemently and unbridled.
You popped
Richard,
his cherry.
I definitely recommend going back and listening to the back catalog about this, because it's really good. In fact,
thank you.
Yeah. So alcoholism is still going to affect me. I will always be an alcoholic. There's a lot of people who don't understand, oh, okay, well, if you don't drink for a couple years, then you're cured, right? No. I'm always going to be an alcoholic till the day I die, and that's why I can't have any.
Yeah, your body chemistry has changed.
Yep. And I can't have it. I don't do moderation. It doesn't bother me if people around me drink. That doesn't affect me at all. And
which is kind of unusual, to be honest.
It is. And I don't even enjoy while I am drunk. And for the past couple of years, when I do binge, I don't even enjoy it. It's habitual and it's complete detachment, because the reason why I binge is either because I just don't want to feel anymore, whatever it is I'm feeling. Things get too overwhelming. It slows down. When my brain is that inebriated, it slows down my thoughts, which are usually always racing, which is one of the symptoms of bipolar or borderline personality disorder, to the point where I guess the way I would describe it is, imagine having 500 TVs on in the background at not a loud level, but not a quiet level, and they're all broadcasting at the same time, and you can hear all of them at the same time. And you're also aware of all the dialogue. Like, you can keep track of 500 of them at a time, but not for very long before you come overstimulated. And that's what my thoughts are all the time. And so it trains a lot of mental discipline, but when it becomes too much, a lot of people self-medicate. Alcohol, cocaine, heroin, opiates, prescription medication, whatever it might be, whatever your poison of choice is. And that's why I think for people who have legitimate mental illnesses, I think it's important to mix regular psychotherapy and having a psychiatrist that can help you balance your medication. Because some of these things, like PTSD, that you can eventually get over. If you have a chemical imbalance like borderline personality disorder or schizophrenia or dissociative identity disorder, those are chemical imbalances that you will never be able to get over. You're just going to have to learn to adapt your life around them.
Like my ADD and my depression.
Mm-hmm.
Those are chemical imbalances. I have to be medicated.
Right. And still to this day, there are so many people out there that abhor pharmaceuticals, but you know what? They're a necessity for people like myself who have problems with their serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or excess serotonin, or not enough, or whatever my brain chemistry decides the day that it wants to do. And I feel, for me, pairing psychotherapy with those medications has been the most helpful thing to my life. Well, that and friends, and not so much the will to continue to live is the spite that I have in my life for life. Sometimes spite and anger is what keeps me going, because I kind of take it as a challenge when life throws these horrible fucking monkey wrenches my way, and I'm thinking, fuck you, universe, you're not going to take me out. And hate can sustain for a while until you can learn to live for other reasons. That, and of course, it sounds so corny but true, the support of friends and family. And I would add that when I say family, I don't just mean blood. Some of the best family I have has been chosen.
There's a saying that everybody has heard, but very few know the full context of it. Blood is thicker than water. The full saying is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, which means that the bonds that you choose are more powerful than the bonds that you were forced into.
I like that.
And that's actually the full quote.
I like that. I like that a lot better. I always wondered where that come from.
Yeah, I just found that out last week, and I was like, that's actually super cool to know.
And yeah, E, you are one of those people.
Oh, absolutely. You're my brother, man.
And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I no longer have contact with my bio brother because some other bullshit, but that's not what this episode's about today. So as far as I'm concerned, E, you are my only brother, and you know this, like, your children are my nieces and nephews.
I know. And I'm proud to have you as part of my family. And it is kind of funny that it was the alcoholism that actually brought us from work, associates that work together, to brotherhood.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know E, I'm a very skeptical person by nature and survival. I always assume the worst. And so this random D-bag came up to me at work one day, just way too friendly and way too smiley and way too... Well, I've said this before to a lot of people. The way I would describe E, if you've never met him, is he is the human embodiment of the spirit of a Labrador Retriever.
I really am.
He's a Labrador Retriever personified in human form. So immediately I didn't trust him, and I was like, you're a tool and I hate you, get away from me. And his just incessant good nature picked and picked and picked and picked until the walls came down, and now he's one of my best friends.
Well, I'm genuine. That's what it is. And you've been
Yeah.
betrayed too many times. It was hard for you to trust. And I mean, I get it. A smiley face or a big smile and that friendliness can be really offsetting if you've been betrayed.
Yeah. Yeah, and just like the episode title says, I mean, during the most pivotal moment of a tiny little baby neuro brain developing, you get betrayed by one of your protectors to that level. Nobody's going to remain psychonormative after that.
Right. And we did to get some comments here. Bexy jumped in to put it in a different way. Family don't end in blood. It don't start there either. Bobby Singer from Supernatural. And then when you were talking about me being the embodiment of a Labrador Retriever, Bexy also said, oh, he so is. And then Brandy said that exuberant, persistent, positive attitude also made him a great teacher. Well, thank you, guys.
Yeah, it did. It did.
And then May, again, E is a fucking ray of sunshine in your grave. Oh, she deleted it. Oh, she found a typo. Yeah, I'm a ray of sunshine in your graveyard, I guess. Oh, ouch. Richard, E is like a yeast infection. He grows on you. Ouch.
Oh.
Ouch.
So, I mean, I think the reason why I wanted to start off with that, the childhood sexual abuse, is because that's often a catalyst for what I'm now living with. And I kind of like to do the person first language instead of like, oh, there's a schizophrenic. Oh, there's a PTSD survivor. Or there's a borderline personality person. Like, I'm a person living with these challenges. They do not define me, and they do not encapsulate the entirety of who I am. They are, yes, a puzzle piece to who I am, but they don't define me.
Exactly. It was like when I went to the anxiety treatment center, which you've been to. That's when I learned I have depression, anxiety, ADHD. They don't have me.
Yeah.
That was such a pivotal moment in my life, hearing that at that center.
Yeah, that was a really good place. I had brought away a lot of tools from that one.
Same.
In fact, some of my desensitization therapy came from there, and we worked with that aforementioned hand lotion. And it got to the point where now, in a supermarket, I can actually walk down the aisle and look at the bottle and not go catatonic. If I smell it, it still makes me retch, but that's pretty rare.
And again, nothing against Vaseline or their lotion. It's just that you had a bad association.
Yeah. Just like anybody, any substitute, any brand name, and any traumatic experience, which leads us into PTSD. For a long time, it was thought that PTSD patients were only prisoners of war or someone who has physically suffered harm. I mean, definitely.
Had a life-threatening situation. That was the DSM-4 definition, but that's outdated.
Right. And definitely, sexual assault as an infant classifies as, physical harm. But PTSD can be any traumatizing experience throughout your life that fundamentally changes the way your brain works, on a chemical level indefinitely. And as it is a trauma, it can be healed. You can get over it. It might not feel like it at times, but it can be done. And every single case is like a snowflake. It's completely unique. Some people respond well to animal therapy, like my dog, Stitch. He's a emotional support animal. Other people do good with talk therapy. Other people do good with whatever other form there is. I put let me scroll down here.
You listed quite a few in that.
Quite a few PTSD links in there. And again, if you guys are just joining us, if you scroll to the bottom of the chat, I wanted to drop that in there at the beginning of the live cast here, so all the resources could be up front. I labeled them PTSD, etc., childhood sexual abuse, etc., body dysmorphic disorder, which I'll get into in a second here. And even if you don't have these, maybe you know someone with them, you can learn about them. And I'll tell you what, the best way to de-demonize mental health issues in the world is education. And I think that's a big reason why I agreed with E to come on here and tell my story is because uh, to this day, even if we're unconscious about it, largely society demonizes the people that are dealing with these issues. And it's not their fault. Nobody chooses to be schizophrenic. Nobody chooses to have dissociative identity disorder. Um, it's something they deal with because it's just the cause and effect of what happened to them throughout their life. It's the ramifications of their own human story.
Right. It's not like I just went, oh, hey, mental disorder bag. Let me go ahead and pull. Yes,
Yeah.
depression. This is making me
Yeah.
so happy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the more that we can educate ourselves about this, the more we're going to put it in the past as far as, um, you know, not burying it, not making a dirty secret anymore. Because to this day, I still get strange looks and weird shifts in like people's presence when I'm in person and I say, "Oh yeah, I have bipolar 2 disorder." There's still some people that like immediately become physically uncomfortable, or they stumble around the conversation, or they find a reason they need to leave. And I'm like,
Sometimes it's almost like they
Jesus.
think that it's contagious or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's really strange.
Meanwhile,
And
Bexy popped
yeah,
off saying that she loves that you sent resources. Education goes a long way to destigmatize mental health matters.
hmm
May,
yeah,
way to come prepared. A, Brandy, family even demonizes it. And that's what I did by little click, bullseye.
yeah, they still do for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
family is probably the most devastating of all, though, because those are supposed to
yeah,
be ride or die no matter what. And when they attack you, or
yeah,
or don't attempt to try to understand and try to get it to know what's going on better, it stings.
yeah, yeah. It does. I mean, I that kind of ties into my next point here. So thank you for mentioning that. Several years ago, is my early 30s. Uh, I went to Oregon to have sort of like family reunion slash Fourth of July slash uh, Uncle Scooby's sort of like, hey, I'm dying of cancer party.
I remember
Um,
this.
yeah,
Man,
and
I was so worried about you the entire trip.
I know you were. Um, so that being said, Uncle Scooby was dying of stage 4 lung and bone cancer, and he knew he was out. And he'd already gone through a couple treatments of um, uh, radiation therapy, chemotherapy, and he didn't want to do it. But we all convinced him to try medicinal marijuana, which actually helped him through his last phase of it. He put weight on, he was able to sleep, he didn't have, queasiness anymore, and he actually started getting healthier in tandem with, of course, continued radiation therapy and Western medicine. And when the docs had originally given him like 9 months to a year to live, in tandem with like medicinal marijuana and his treatment plan with his doctor, he got like 4 more years. So
Wow.
big win for us. Yeah, big win for us. And didn't want this to be a medicinal marijuana episode, but I can vouch for it. I've seen it work. Um, and anyways, I went up there because it was his birthday and 4th of July and family reunion, and everybody kind of seeing Uncle Scooby one last time before they couldn't. And he personally called me and said, "Hey, I really want you to be there." And keep in mind, my father's side of the family, I hadn't seen them since I was like 8 years old. Um, we were pretty tight growing up as kids, and then just kind of, the flow of life took us in a different direction. Hadn't spoken to him for many years. And he's like, "But your dad's going to be there." And he's my brother, and I know there's some bad blood between you two. And I'm sure the family knew. Like, when I recovered those memories, I started calling specific family members I know I could trust. And my father's side of the family is huge. Uh, there's like, I think altogether there's like 9 aunts and uncles, big. And
I'm quite familiar with that.
Yeah, and from what I can understand, the family was kind of divided. A lot of them thought, "Oh, well, you're just mad because your parents got a divorce, so you're making up stories." And I'm like, no, no. The detail in which I have these memories would probably send you into like full mental shutdown. And some of my family on that side, right off of the bat, they're like, "I believe you. I'm on your side. Fuck him." And I think that the question that got me the most, it was in the syntax of the question. And a couple of my family members asked me, it was the wording too that just fucking pissed me off. What do you think that you remember about those incidences?
Mm.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What the fuck do I think that I remember? I can describe in detail my father's genitalia, like in vivid detail.
No
And
kid should be able to do that.
yeah, yeah. And you know, I mean, I still have those memories, and they're like little few second snippet trailers that just whenever they want, they pop into my head, and I've got to do my tools to like acknowledge them and push them, and all that shit. But yeah, I mean, I would be happy to sit down and in great length tell you from beginning to end every passing moment that happens, and just let me know when you're uncomfortable because I've lived through it. And after telling a lot of them off and saying, you know what, I'm here to tell the truth, and what you do with that, whether you bury it and you descend into cognitive dissonance, or if you accept the fact that your brother is a child predator and an incestual rapist, that's up to you, buddy. Um,
The truth is the
so
truth. How you deal with it's up to you.
yeah, and a couple of the family members that I thought were going to descend into cognitive dissonance didn't, and they listened to my stories and they said, that actually begins to make a lot of sense of all these incidences throughout their past and growing up, even when he was, um, a young man, and like ways that he would look at young girls. And funny enough, though, he only targeted me and my brother, and far as I know, it was never like stranger children. The only when he would target children that were not his own, he switched to females, and that's actually very common in sexual predators. They usually pick a preference and they stick to it. So with my father, it was his young sons, and then he continued to show a lot of like it was almost like he didn't even fucking hide it. He had an attraction to young girls too, and I knew this because like when I'd bring friends and friends over from school, like junior high and high school, he always made it a point to like try to hang in the vicinity so he could just basically predatorial gaze and like you know take pictures for the spank bank for my girl, like my female friends. And anyways, when I was at the reunion, I didn't have really a drive to go find him in the reunion. I was gonna just stay in my corner, and if I saw him, I saw him. I wasn't gonna engage with him at all. I was there for Scooby. I wasn't there for him. And honestly, that forum was not the right place for us to have out whatever it is that we need to hash out. So I was just off.
No, I mean family reunions and celebrating the life of an uncle who was dying. That's the last
Right.
place you want to bring up that kind of a thing. Bring that
Right.
out of the closet and address it.
And I told Uncle Scooby that because he had some reservations about like, I know you and your dad have some hot blood between each other, but like, I don't want that to interrupt the family gathering. And I said it won't. Um, so what I do remember though is I was eventually he came up to me, and I have an aunt. I'm going to call her B. And she was one of the very first to get behind me on this and back me up and said, whatever you need, night or day. I'm here for you. I believe you about my brother. And she's always been there for me. I had severe dyslexia when I was a kid, like horrible, horrible dyslexia to the point where when I'd look at written word, they would literally dance and glide on the page like they were actually moving. And she helped me rewire my brain and learn to read. And now I'm an avid reader.
The most voracious reader I know.
Yeah. I've got like 4 bookshelves, and I need another 1 or 2 because I've got more books underneath my bed that need a home. So I'm very close to Aunt B, and I was in the backyard teaching one of my younger, my cousin's children, second cousin, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, grand cousin. I don't know.
Yeah, so I was teaching her how to throw throwing hatchets into a log, and just so happens we had some like throwing knives and some throwing stars and a bunch of throwing implements. And he comes, I'm holding him in my left hand, like a stack of them, probably a dozen or so of various different sharp pointies and blades. And he comes up to my right side, and when I saw him, I almost didn't recognize him because he was so broken. Like, he looked physically ill, like he had a wasting disease. And I almost double taked at him and squinted because I was like, who the fuck is that? That kind of looks like that guy. And sure enough, it was him. It's just he was frail and dying. I don't know whether it was crushing guilt or his alcoholism caught up with him, or maybe he has some disease he never came clean about. But
or some combination thereof.
And I didn't. He was talking to me, and I saw his mouth moving, but I didn't hear anything. I kind of got that like all sound goes out thing, and all I heard was like the rushing of the blood in my ears. And I look at him, and he's kind of saying something and standing there waiting for a response. And then on my left arm, I feel Aunt Beth pulling, and suddenly sound comes back to me, and she's like, Adam, let the weapons go, drop the weapons. And I was like, oh, sure. And she was like trying to dig them out of my hand, but I had vice grip on him and cut myself a little bit because I was squeezing onto him. And she took them from me, and
like, your conscious mind may not have remembered, but your body remembered.
My body did, yeah. And so his wife after my mom came up, and I'm still puzzling all this together, and this is all happening in the span of like literally 10 seconds. So, but time slows down when you approach the void. And his wife comes up to my right side and just hugs me without asking, and I lock up, and I just kind of shrug her off, and Aunt B comes around.
You are not a hugger unless you are prepared for it. Then you are a total hugger.
I'm not. Oh, yeah. Once I know you, I'll hug the crap out of you every chance I get. But I don't like to be touched by people at all unless, you have to get to know me for a long time before I like any sort of physical contact. And so Aunt B has like the implements of pointy and sharp, and she goes and takes that wife of his away and nearly pulls her off of her feet. She's like, come on, they need their alone time. They need to like just get the fuck away. And so he stammers a bunch of platitudes like, hey, how you doing? Where you living? What are you doing for a job nowadays? And I answer him like monosyllabically, and just staring at him like, these are really the first things that you're saying after, I don't know, like 15, 20 years of not seeing each other. And what I've told the family, everyone knows. And I just stood there staring at him, and he kind of stammered off, and he's like, look, I'm sorry. I just really don't honestly know what to say right now, and I'm kind of scared. And I didn't mean it to sound threatening. and it wasn't. I wasn't trying to be threatening or puffery, but the words that came out of my mouth and I didn't think was, "You have every reason to be, and you should be." And I
And if
just
you know
stared
A,
at him.
that's kind of par for the course with A. He'll just pop off with stuff like that.
Yeah, I've been told by E and many other people around me that I'm a man of few words, but when I speak, they're weighted.
Oh yeah.
Um, and he handed me with a shivering hand like his business card, and he said, "Look, um, when you're ready on your own time, I think there's a lot of family history we need to talk about." And I was, I'm usually very quick with words. Like when I have something to say, I'll hold on to it until it's at its most advantageous time to use. Um, I was dumbfounded and at a loss for words. I was like, you think so? There might be a little bit to talk about, maybe some skeletons in the family closet to hash out." And I took it and I said, "This weekend is for Uncle Scooby, not for us." And he just kind of nodded and agreed and walked away, and he kept his distance for the rest of the reunion. And the plane ride back, I was still processing all of this. And during touchdown, as soon as I walked out of the airport, I was overcome with a release of emotional and mental burden and weight. And I rode that high for like 2 months when I got home. And I've never felt more personal power in my life than I did then. And just addressing it that much and acknowledging that much, telling the family, and me knowing that he knows and that everyone knows was really good. And I think that was a huge step in my overall acceptance and coming to terms with it. Um,
Yeah, there was definitely a turning point that I've noticed in
yeah,
you from that too. I mean, I didn't you
yeah.
didn't you never told me this part of the story. And now
Oh, I
things
didn't.
are
Okay.
no. Now things are starting to click together based on your behaviors before the reunion and your behaviors after. There's
Yeah,
definitely a you still have your tough points, obviously. You still have some issues that you're
sure.
dealing through it with, but I've noticed a
Yeah,
general more positive A.
yeah.
Also,
And
really quick, when you
yeah.
were talking about, the questions that you got that really pissed you off,
Hmm.
made a very valid point. To victims, uh, those questions to victims enable abusers. How do you
Yes, they do.
feel? You remember?
Yeah.
And then D said, "There's a lot to be said about such abuse. Thank you for sharing." And then after your comment about you should be,
Yeah.
for being afraid, Make popped off with "I fucking love you."
And yeah, I definitely, I'm glad we kind of spun back around to that. Like, I am, well, I mean, for obvious fucking reasons, I'm a huge proponent of the Me Too movement, and there is a lot of still ignorance about what the Me Too movement is. And while yes, there might be some people who are coattailing it, that is not what it's about. It's about
No.
breaking the silence and stop blaming the fucking victim for sexual assault. And I'm also a huge feminist. And even before I got the question, "What do you think you remember about the events?" the the term like, "Oh, boys will be boys," or, "Well, what was she wearing?" or, "What was she doing?" It doesn't fucking matter. Whoever says no, that person fucking said no. That means no. And
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, so yeah, I get heated when it comes to stuff like that because I have I have a direct tie into it. Um, so
And
yeah,
I've noticed that when survivors of abuse stop the cycle, the person who stopped the cycle of abuse is the one that's left with the anxiety. Maybe it's in our
hmm,
genes.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they do say that stress and trauma that big can be passed on genetically.
Epigenetics. We talked about that with Rachel a couple of times now.
Yeah.
It keeps coming back to it. There's a lot to be said about it.
One thing I did want to put out there just for the edification, I've been dealing with my sexual assault and rape for so long that I can pretty much talk about it freely. But for anybody who knows anyone who like is going to be coming out about it or comes out about it, or you're pretty sure, but maybe that person doesn't know yet. When a person comes to you and finally has enough courage and strength to share their story, a lot of people's first reactions is to console them by hugging them. Please don't do this. It's very invasive and very uncomfortable. And half of us might reflexively sock you in the throat. Now, it's happened before, and I understand the intention of where it comes from, but when you're talking about it, you're reliving it, and the last thing that you usually want, and I'm not speaking for everyone, I'm just saying it's kind of split down the middle. There are people that don't care, and maybe it's comforting, and there are people like me. I don't want to be touched, especially not when I'm reliving it, re-talking about it. Even if my spouse at the time was to come by and like hug me or touch me on the shoulder to give me encouragement of talking about it, like I just don't want to be fucking touched when I'm coming out about this or talking about it.
So basically what you're saying is ask before you touch.
Ask, always ask. Consent is the most important thing. Or just read the ambient room, like read the body language, you know? I mean, just putting that out there.
Right. And Bexy threw out that she was told fat girls don't get sexually abused. No one will believe you.
Oh, man. That motherfucker.
Yeah, I wish you guys could see his face right now. There's a wave of rage actually rippled through his body. It was visible.
Yeah, and rage. We'll springboard off of that. I love the way all this stuff is just. I love the way this stuff is just kind of coming together. So, I think I wish this was like a class where I could, raise your hand if you know anything about BPD or borderline personality disorder, or bipolar 1 or 2. Bipolar and BPD are often misdiagnosed, either one for the other, because they're so similar. And the main difference between them is a borderline personality disorder will have much of the same symptoms of mood fluctuation, going from extremely happy to extremely angry. But a borderline personality disorder, the fluctuation is quicker. So in an hour, they can go through the gambit of emotions, or several times a day. A borderline personality disorder goes through them quick. A bipolar person might have like low lows for hours or days or weeks or months. And then maybe they'll have a high. They'll ride their manic stage for like a week. That's the main difference, where borderline can say in one breath, say how much they love you and revere you. And then by the end of the sentence, they fucking hate you and they wish you were dead. And then an hour later, jump back to one of the two. Another big misconception about borderline personality disorder, and I encourage you, please go open those links and read about it, because we could have an entire episode about each one of these, but like I've said to Eric, I've got more baggage than an airport. I did it again. Anyways, oh well.
Everybody knows my name by now. It's just one day we're gonna get a guest on that doesn't know me by anything but E. So
yeah, I'm sorry, my bad. I did it twice, and I was so sure in the beginning I was gonna be the one that didn't. But anyways, like I was saying, this is gonna be a long episode because I've got more baggage than an airline, and I've got stuff to go through. I wish I could give them all their own lengths, but I can't. So I'm gonna be jumping back and forth. The biggest misconception about borderline personality disorder is, for the large majority of people who are diagnosed with it, they're outwardly explosive. And I mean to an extreme. Like Hollywood level stuff. Say for instance, Hollywood only ever shows people with epilepsy have grand mal seizures where they flop on the ground and froth. I'm also an epileptic, but there's literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different types of the way seizures present themselves. And it's not usually always that grandiose.
And I've seen a few personally, because you're not the first epileptic in my life.
Yeah, and for the most part, they're just not that interesting. They just don't make good for good cinema. That's why they always depict grand mal seizures. But borderline personality disorder, yes, they're usually very outwardly explosive. And sometimes they'll cut themselves or mutilate themselves to show someone. Well, I'll show you if you reject me, I'll kill myself. I, on the other hand, am what they call quiet borderline. It's the same amount of explosion, but it's internal. And you won't ever know when it's affecting me because I'm very good at a poker face and I'm very good at turning off and on my emotions when I need them, which is what I learned from a lot of kids of sexual abuse or even extreme physical abuse or any kind of abuse. They learn to disassociate like masters, and they install a flip switch for their emotions. They can turn them on, they can turn them off as their body needs and as their mind needs to survive.
And I've been able to start to learn them on you. I'm not the best at it, I'll admit it, but there are times I'll see it and it's just like, whoa, okay, something changed.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it takes a long, long time to earn my trust and have me let you in my circle. But when I do, it's lifelong. Like, I don't make transitory friends. It's because I don't see any reason to. I fill my life with only the, most diehard, the ride or die friends. And that probably ties into a lot of the BPD. One of the main characteristics is horrified and just terrified at the idea of being abandoned or betrayed. And there's a lot more. I would encourage you guys to go click on those links. But particularly, I think there's 5 recognized types of borderline personality disorder, one of them being quiet. I can't remember what the other 4 off the top of my head. But it's quite interesting to read about. And again, it's not like if you know someone with borderline personality disorder, oh, well, they're just, one glass of spilt milk away from like setting the entire house on fire. And that's not what it is.
You burn cold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. Yeah, there was a couple times I was surprised when your wife told me I'm scared of you, and that hurt really bad because I don't want my closest friends and family to be scared of me, and I've never thought I was an intimidating person. Like I said, I've never been big. I've always had to rely on my wit for survival because I was a scrawny little kid. And when I hear things like that, it's frightening and hurtful. But I know she wasn't saying that to like be hurtful. It's just she was being open and honest about her feelings. And
right. And I think a part of it also is that she really doesn't understand everything that is A.
Right.
There's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Some of your behaviors, I mean, obviously there are some behaviors that you do that are definitely not normative. I don't think you can. It's just part of who you are with the experiences you've been through and just everything that makes up you.
Yeah.
It took me a while to really get to understand it and know it. It's just you have a very intense air about you, even when you're relaxed. It's kind of crazy.
I've been told that, and I always thought that I was very placid and calm and nondescript, but I guess that's not true.
You have a very piercing gaze is part of it, and when you give attention, it is so focused. If you ever get around to going through the Wheel of Time, you remind me of a warder. You just have even at your ease, there's just this air of danger. But I know you don't see it because you're not that way. But
I'm not
there.
dangerous unless you fuck with my pack.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
I feel that I'm one of the most easygoing, accepting, like, yeah, man, whatever.
And you really are. It's just
As long
that
as you don't.
but there's an air about you. And it might just be a self-defense kind of mechanism that you're unaware of.
Probably. I would imagine so, yeah. And I'm not going to spend too much time about bipolar 2 because I know several of these episodes have been on that, and I think the audience is probably more familiar.
We had one that was really specific about it.
Right. And like I said, bipolar 2 and BPD are very close. It's just the length of time of the episodes. So bipolar 1 and 2, the quick difference, and then I'm going to jump to another topic here.
Even Bexy could tell that you're very focused with your attention on this episode, having never seen you before, but also that you're a very easygoing guy.
Oh, thank you.
Bexy, I think, is a HSP. So when you get
cool.
there.
And we're gonna get to that too. So thank you for mentioning that. So bipolar 1 is a person that when they're having one of their episodes or their outbreaks, they're in mania. It's like being on coke all the time. Like everything is great. You can do anything. You've got all these ideas. You have this internal thought process that is just firing on all synapses. And it sounds great to like be that keyed up and high all the time, but it's not, because some of my borderline 1 friends have done some severely damaging stuff to their life. Like I had a friend that liquidated everything she had, sold her car, sold her house, took out her cash from her bank account, moved to Australia, just decided to move to Australia one day. She stayed there for 9 months, spent everything she had, and was stuck there and had to come back. And family had to pay for her airline tickets, and now she's living with mom.
You feel invincible is what I've been told.
Yeah.
I've only ever had one manic episode in my life, and I could see how it can really spiral into that.
Yeah, and if you're bipolar 1 or 2, it doesn't mean that you don't get depressive or you don't get manic. It means you spend most of your time in one or the other. I'm bipolar 2, so I get the lucky draw that when I'm having one of my episodes, I'm either incredibly depressed, like more than just normal depression. It's like depression of the abyss. And when you get to that level, it doesn't matter if, someone tells you the greatest news of your life. That it's going to come with a catch, or it's just not good enough. What's worse is when
you won the lottery. Yeah, but half of that's going to taxes.
Right. Yeah. So nothing can make you feel better. I'm bipolar 2. I spend most of my time in the troughs, so to speak, instead of the peaks. And when it gets really bad, I go completely numb. Like absolute robot numb. You can come up to me and tell me 2 things. You can tell me you've won the lotto, like the $10 trillion lotto, and we cured cancer, and we solved sexism and world hunger and racial issues across the world, and we solved war. And I'll be like, okay. And then the next person come up to me and said, yes, but for that cost, everyone you know and love burned in a fire. And the last thing they said was they actually hated you your whole life. And I'd be like, okay. The reactions are identical, and neither one mean anything to me. That's when it's the worst. And for me, it usually lasts anywhere from a couple days to like a couple weeks.
And I've seen that a few times.
Yeah.
And when you lived with us, you went through that too.
Yeah. And I even remember times like in my thought process, it's mainly, I think, when my BPD peaks up, like plenty of times I've thought, this whole relationship and familial sense that I have with E and his family, it's transcendental. It's temporary. It's not as real as I think it is. I mean,
Those are
people
fighting
change.
words.
Yeah. People change, and 10 years from now, if I move on from the company where I work, um, I mean, who's to say we're going to stay in touch? It's like all things. It's temporary. It's fake. There's no solidity to it. There's no validation to it. And then of course,
Of course,
I
I
get
don't
out of
work
that.
there anymore, and we're still
Yeah.
tight as can
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. It's That's true. Uh, so that's kind of the hells of being bipolar and borderline is you working with both of those things, and they work so well to each other. I mean, even a long time practicing psychotherapist or psychiatrist has trouble diagnosing them separately. And the quiet BPD is even more difficult to discover. But I think we need to backpedal a little bit here. I have this list of notes I'm going on here, and one of the things I want to touch on that I have a little bit of, my case of it is not nearly as bad as someone else's. So
Hey,
at some point in the future of this,
one thing that we talk about on this podcast too is that just because your case isn't as bad as others, it does not does not diminish your experiences.
yeah, and I'm still learning that. True, yes, it's not a competition. But if anybody's out there familiar or listening, or maybe wants to come on later and talk about it, it's called body dysmorphic disorder, and it's tied into trauma and anxiety and a misperception of what's real. I guess the analogy I would use is if you know anybody that's anorexic or bulimic, a lot of times people with eating disorders see something in the mirror that nobody else sees. And body dysmorphic disorder can have all kinds of ways of presenting itself. Mine is sometimes when I look at the mirror at my body, my naked body, I just see disgust and just gross and something that should be abhorred and appalled and shameful and disgusting, and nobody wants to look at it, let alone me. And I feel like I'm stuck in a prison of disgust and filth. And
So
I know
basically,
that comes.
you're in like a rotting meat suit.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not disgust in the way that you look at a rotting cadaver and go, ew, gross. It's like everything about my body is unattractive and unappealing, and I should hide it because nobody is going to want to see it or touch it, or it's built into the shame that manifests from anyone who's a survivor of sexual abuse. It's very common, and I know it. And in my head, even when it's happening in my head, I know intellectually my perception is wrong. Just like someone who's having a moment of psychosis. If you're schizophrenic, I have a lot of schizophrenic friends, and they know, even when they're hearing and seeing something that I can't see, they know that's not really there, but it's their own perception of reality, and it's their own reality at that time. So it's fucking real.
Right.
Just because I can't see it, because E can't see it, because everybody listening can't see it, doesn't mean it's not real. It just means we can't perceive it.
Right. And it's like that whole thing, the war between the logical, rational mind versus the emotional, irrational mind.
Mm-hmm.
They can cause some really fucked up conflicts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I've had my schizophrenic friends say, like, if it looks like I'm tuning you out, I'm not. I'm just trying to ignore what you're not seeing. And I'm like, okay, no problem. And they know it's just a hallucination, but it doesn't make it any less actual for them. And I say that because, and I've shared this with some of my relationship partners before, and they have assured me, I am very attracted to you. You're a handsome man and this and that. And it doesn't matter how much positive affirmation you have from another person. You're not going to convince me otherwise. And it's not always. Like, I don't always feel that way. It's just, it comes in bouts, and it's usually quick and fleeting, and then it's gone. And then I feel like, Yeah, I'm not a grotesque monster. Someone wants to hug me.
Well, I mean, yeah. I try to hug you every time I see you, except today. But I was feeling a
Yeah,
little under the weather, so
yeah. Yeah. Um, so yeah, there's that one. If anybody has any personal knowledge about that, it's it can be very difficult to overcome. And believe me, there are people out there that have that struggle more than me. I just wanted to touch on it because a lot of people who survive sexual assault or abuse like that will probably manifest some sort of that. The reason why I'm saying all this, and I want to throw as much on the wall as possible, is because there was a episode I think 3 weeks ago about R and her daughter.
yes, yes.
Okay, so I wasn't listening to that episode live, but I think it was a couple days after. And 3 weeks ago, I told E this. Saturday and Sunday, I was fully suicidal, and it was not a call for like it wasn't a attempt at suicide for attention. It was like definitely gonna do this thing. The only reason why I held off was because I wanted to log on to our servers at work and look at my benefits package and see verbatim what did the law say about accidental death and dismemberment insurance paying out and what's covered. And then I did like 4 hours or maybe like 3 hours of research about ways that you could kill yourself without making it look like suicide, but also making it look like an accident that would fall under the clause of accidental dismemberment. And then I realized, oh shit, I don't have a will written, so I gotta jump on our on our HR web, and I'm sure that work does not put that information out there for the intent that I was using it. Probably the opposite. But
Right.
I went on there and I wrote out a will really quick, and I texted E all these weird random questions, and he's like, why are you asking those questions, buddy?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, just stuff. Just realized I don't have a will and thought I'd be a responsible adult and do it.
Kind of young for a will there, bud.
Not really.
No, that is true. That is true.
I would say if you're 18, you should have a will. So yeah, was gonna do it, and I was going methodical and robot about it because at the time, yeah, I was probably in one of my slumps, either borderline or bipolar, and I had no emotions at the time because I turned them off, and I wanted to make sure everything was planned out meticulously. So,
and one thing that you listeners may need to know about A is that he's philosophically a utilitarian.
Yeah,
this ties into and this part ties into it.
Yeah, to some extent. Yes, I am utilitarian
to an extent.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were purely utilitarian, there'd be no way that I'd be able to be your friend.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I just have less of a problem that society's norms push on a lot of people. I don't know. But I think we're getting to that HSP that Bex was talking about. So highly sensitive person.
Yeah, Bexy said that she's an empath. I could feel his energy, which ties right into it.
Yep, I am too, and that's why it's very hard for me to. I'm also an introvert mostly. That's my default, at least. I can be an ambivert and an extrovert when I need to, and I can be social when I need to. I can lead when I need to. I just prefer not to. And that's kind of one of the things I think I picked up. And Bex, I'm sure that if we ever met and shared stories, we'd probably have a lot of similarities growing up. And I think that's cultivated young. I think everybody has the propensity to be empathic and pick up on people. And it's just a matter of nurturing the seed. And some have more of a propensity than others. But yeah. The burden of an empath is a lot because you have to recharge yourself usually by being alone. HSP kind of ties into that, and it's sort of a new term, and it would probably even be considered pop psychology right now. until more research is done on it. But they use a lot of DBT, which is dialectic behavioral therapy, and that ties right into what they use for bipolar and also borderline personality disorder, as well as EMDR. I forgot what the acronym means at the moment, but it's there. You can search it. HSP stands for highly sensitive person, and when I initially heard it, I laughed. I'm like, what? So they're just like way overly emotional and cry about everything, and they're fucking wussies. And I was like, after some research and someone who's more educated on it than me, it's not like that at all. It's what develops in a person that in their genesis of growing up, they always had to be keyed up. They always had to be turned up to 11, like their senses, their hearing, their reading the ambient vibe in a room, their attention to detail on the smallest inflection of the tone of a person's voice when they're speaking, or the tiniest change in body or facial changes or body language. And it's because most of these kids were brought up in a realm of fucking chaos, whereas one kid might not notice the left eye twitch for literally a quarter of a second, but that could be the precursor about you're about to get your head smacked in with whatever's nearby. It's about learning the vocal changes in someone on such a highly perceptive level that you might know what's coming in their thought pattern or their feeling before they do, so that you can be ready for it. And as a kid who survived through the kind of abuse that I have, that was an essential evolution survival tool. And so these people can go into a room. I'm not joking. You can go into a room in which multiple people were fighting and know who was fighting and what role they were playing. And you don't say anything. You don't ask anybody questions. And you could just tell. You could tell who started it. You could tell who's trying to be the peacemaker. You could tell like the entire cast.
And I've seen A walk into a house after my wife and I have been in an argument, or one of the kids, and he just walks in, has his grin on his face, and just collapses, and he just turns and went to his room. So yeah, I've seen it. Yeah. This is not BS. And yeah, Bexy's saying that she has chills over this. Mm-hmm. And before we go too far, Tommy, last name, joined in. Yeah. One of the porch drunkies with May, the other porch drunkie. When I was talking about how don't discount your experiences just because you have a lesser case, he said the same thing. Everyone's experiences in their life is their own. Your journey and another's is different, but accepting that is hard. And then Bexy came in. Even as an adult, a tone change when someone is talking to me can instantly bring me to tears. Tension from fights is palpable. I could feel it.
Yeah, definitely.
And EMDR is eye movements, desensitization, and reprogramming or reprocessing, which Rachel Conway did talk about that in her first episode, which was episode 10, season 1.
She did, yeah. And I would encourage, open the links. Whatever I've talked about today that spikes your interest, open those links. And I put like categories and then links and categories links. I would encourage people to check out all the HSP links because they're very interesting. And you know what? I didn't know I was until I kind of found out that I was. I just always thought everybody had that. They don't. And the analogy I would use is like a professional trained soldier or something. They are trained to be way more perceptive than the average person because they have to be for survival. Now, I'm not at all saying I am a soldier or a veteran or a warrior because I'm not. I'm just saying the idea is similar. You have to train yourself to pick up on things that other people don't, like a crime scene analogist person. And it just so happens the HSP is fairly well steeped in like reading ambient energy signatures, and I don't mean like hippy dippy stuff. I mean like just the way your energy changes when you're mad or you're happy or you're depressed or you're this or that. There's a lot to it, and it's an interesting new thing that's popping up in psychology, and I'd really like to see where it goes.
And just so you're aware, we are at an hour and a half now.
Okay.
So we're halfway through the maximum episode length.
Yeah, and I don't think we're gonna go for another hour and a half. I'm trying to go quick, but keep it flowing.
I mean, there's a lot to go through.
Yeah,
and it all ties into this is you. This is your life. This is what you deal with.
Right.
This whole smorgasbord, which just goes to show for those out there that are like feeling defeated because they have more than one condition. That's not uncommon. You're not alone.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's funny you mentioned that because, like, when I was listening to R's story, I wanted to be sure that I was pretty close to that one because a lot of people out there have been in proximity of childhood abuse like this. Like, you're a parent of, or you're a sister of, or you're a brother of, or you're something. And your struggle and my struggle is just as bad. They're all valid, but I would like to give insight into being a childhood survivor of it. And I grew up, I'm 37 now, I'm mostly grown up, and this is the shit that I have to deal with. This is most of what I'm going through and what I'm dealing with on a daily basis, and the battles I fight and the struggles I fight is due to that, and I know that. So for better or worse, I'm not trying to scare anyone out there that has a childhood or a child that has gone through it or a loved one. It's a long fucking battle, and it sucks ass. And the best you can do is like maybe get them prepared for it. Start looking to this stuff preemptively. Know that you can survive through it and you can find happiness, because I don't want you guys to think that every single waking moment of my life is this, because it's not. It's just a puzzle piece of who I am. I mean, I enjoy things. I do. I have a lot of things that I enjoy and I look forward to, and I have dreams and goals and aspirations for the future. And I think I'm just focusing on it so much is because that's what this live cast is all about. It's talking about the issues. It's not putting them under the carpet anymore. It's not closing them up in the family cabinet anymore.
This is we're bringing it out. We're hanging it up on the clothesline and beating it. We're getting it out there.
Yeah.
And also, Mai said that it's called a change in affect. I'm a hugging. You're being hugged right now. Again, picking up all the things around. They can't be higher on other people because of all the things they pick up on. And then Tommy actually has a question for you.
Yes.
Do you think the emphasis on men as being strong pillars attributes to overlooking some struggles?
What do you mean?
I think what he means is, how men are supposed to be like the rock, the foundation, the stoic one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree with that.
I'm glad you brought that up. And that my initial concept of the question brought up some other things I wanted to talk about, but I'm glad you reframed that because it wasn't what I thought the question was. But yeah, I've always never agreed with the whole like idea that men should be stoic and men should never show their emotions and men should not feel, and if you show your emotions you're this or that. I'm not going to use the pejorative, but I'm sure we can all imagine.
Right, and I mean that's usually is the man that winds up being abusive, the man that explodes and snaps, the man that sets fire to the house with his family in it.
Right, and I'm very open with my emotions. I think you talked about this earlier. Like, if you meet me and I in any way want a further social relationship with you, whether it's friends or whatever, I will always tell you exactly what I think and feel about you. I do not pull punches. I am exactly precise and to the point. If I don't like you, I'm not going to be an asshole to you, but you'll know because I will be just very indifferent but kind. Kind of like you would at someone at the office. So if I'm treating you kind and indifferent, it means I don't like you. But
And if you're asked point blank, you'll probably tell the truth. I know I would. And I know that you've never pulled punches with me, which is one of the things I value about you more than anything. I know exactly where I stand with you. There's a lot to be said about that.
I think that's important. And I'm not doing it to be malicious. It's just, this life is so fucking short, everyone. Jesus Christ. We have no room for these dancing around in the ether and, like, guessing what we mean about each other. Just say it.
Yeah. And you've said some things that have pissed me off. But you needed to say it. I needed to hear it, and I appreciate you for it.
Yeah.
Not at the moment I didn't, but, later on when I had time to process.
Yeah. Yeah. And I expect the same in return too. And it's just not everybody is as comfortable with being that blunt or open. And I always wear my heart on my sleeves. But to get back to, was it Abe?
Tommy.
Tom, not even close to Abe. Okay, cool. So, Tommy, I've always hated that, and never having a real reliable male role model or father figure, I had to make up my own. And it came in the form of my grandfather, who is still the most influential and important male role model I've ever had in my life. And it came in the form of all of the fiction stories I read to disassociate and drown myself in before I was adult or old enough to find drugs and alcohol. When I was a kid, I was always playing fantasy games. I was always doing something that would take me away from the world of reality. And it came in the form of reading about, heroes and comics and people in, like, fantasy realm novels or sci-fi novels, and Frankensteining bits and pieces of what I thought was the best male role model or the best father figure I could ever have. And so essentially growing up without a male role model, that fucking sucks. And it's still something to this day that I even kind of besides the sexual assault, I'm like, you also took that from me. Like, I never know what it's like to have a dad, like a real dad, or a healthy relationship with a father. Like, all those, anytime you see in the movies where there's, like, a son and a father portrayed with a healthy relationship, I'm kind of pissy about it. I'm like, that's fucking bullshit. And I wonder how many people really have that, and if they realize how fucking lucky they are. So if you're out there and you're listening and you do have a good relationship with your father, don't take it for granted. After you are listening with the podcast today, call or text your father and tell him how much you love him.
Hey, Dad, I know you're listening. I love you.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, I am a little envious and bitter for the people that have that, because I won't. But that's okay, because I had my grandpa, and I raised myself into the man I am, and I think I did okay.
I think you did an admirable job, quite honestly.
Thank you. But one thing Grandpa always told me is, like, real men are able to show their emotions and share them. It's a weak man who hides it and buries it away, because it means he's not strong enough to deal with them. And so, yeah, I think that's something that even today we unfortunately put on the men of the generation is, suck it up, be the rock, don't ever open your emotions or your feelings to your family, especially your family. And that's so fucking damaging,
And that's kind of funny that you said suck it up, because Tommy also said, I've seen multiple situations where men were expected to just suck it up. But they are humans with feelings too, but the lack of acknowledgement of that is troubling. Mm-hmm. And I was really upset when Me Too became a feminist movement, as opposed to letting the men get a voice when it came to sexual abuse. That came from Mai.
Right.
And then Bexy, how you were talking about how you feel about, like me with my dad. Sorry, I have a healthy relationship. I'm very proud of it.
Don't apologize.
I'm not.
Apologize.
But that's how Bexy feels about people who had good relationships with their grandparents. So you're getting a lot of empathy and sympathy here. And also, I feel horrible about the way men are shortchanged when it comes to their mental health.
Yeah. Anyone. And about the Me Too thing, I never perceived that as a feminist movement. I thought that was just a victim movement. That's why I got behind it. It's like I never once thought it was feminist only. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are affected by it, and a lot of guys did the hashtag Me Too. I don't do social media, so I didn't, but anytime it was spoken about.
And I mean, just the fact that like someone like Kevin Spacey was taken down, and that was children, and he was taken down as part of the Me Too movement, tells it's more of the victims. But at the end, it really did start turning not into a feminist movement, as in the healthy feminist movement, but the cancerous anti-man feminist movement, which I hate that they try to hijack feminism with that when they are absolutely anti-man. Because there's definitely that cancerous side of it. And that happens with a lot of movements, that you'll get that bad element that'll try to hijack it and make it something that it's not.
So yeah, to answer Tommy's question, I think that's just terrible. And I don't see that as much with the newest generation, like millennials and what is it, Z or A or something like that?
Gen Z, the Zoomers.
So I like the way that I see him going now. And for a long time, I gave up on the future of humanity because I saw what was brewing. But the more young people I meet, the more I'm like, thank you guys, because you actually give me hope for a better of humanity. You know, like, it's okay now to like be a guy and have emotions. It's okay to be a sensitive man, where like in the 80s and 90s, if you were a sensitive boy, you like, God damn, dude, you're fucked. Like,
and Tommy came out and said, you know, it was supposed to be, I think referring to the movement, was supposed to be for the victims, but I didn't feel open with the Me Too movement to come out. So I told him that I think Tommy needs an episode. And Kat said to Tommy, I'm old and grew up with the knowledge that males were supposed to mostly keep their emotions to themselves, i.e. being stoic. It's only been the last few decades that it's been publicly accepted for men to be emotional, cry, visibly upset, or even overcome with joy.
Yeah.
And I mean,
that's tragic.
Quite a few people in here that in the chat have seen it personally, or have seen or known of it. Yeah, I will let my emotions out. I will cry. I will cry with joy. I will cry with, heartbreak. I did try bottling up my emotions when I was a teenager. It was bad.
Yeah, it's cancerous.
It's like basically it's like you're taking in poison and you're not letting it out.
Yeah.
And then you just keep adding more and more poison. What happens? The body dies. The soul dies. The spirit dies.
It's kind of a cool quote. And again, because I love reading, Mark Twain said, anger is the acid that can do more harm to the vessel it is in than to anything it would be poured upon.
Yeah, kind of like that one. I can't remember if it was the Dalai Lama or if it was Gandhi that said, that anger, holding on to anger is like holding on to a hot coal and expecting it to burn your enemy.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
It's another good one.
Yeah. So did anybody, I know it just clobbered you guys all with these like quick back-to-back things, but did anybody have any questions about anything I talked about today? I'm an open book. You can feel free to ask me anything about whatever I've talked about.
Which I'll quickly tag on something here while people are coming up with their questions, because it takes time to type.
Oh, yeah, I'm not in a rush.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to know about addiction, like real fucking bad alcoholism, talk about the childhood abuse, I'm fine with that. Any of it.
Because I was going to say is that one of the things I wanted to do is get that website started. I have another donation that's coming in, so I've already started talking with the person that's going to be developing the website, and we now have the ability to accept donations. If you're on the main Sprecher page for this podcast, in the description down at you'll have to expand it, but when you get to the bottom, you'll see that we now accept PayPal, we accept LibraPay, Stripe, and Cash App. And this will help in order to be able to grow this, so that way discussions can go beyond the podcast onto forums. So that way everyone could go ahead and keep their, on podcast names, on chat names. So that way these discussions could keep going with the anonymity. That being the goal for the next phase. And then,
sorry about that again.
Oh, no. And then Tommy, again, says, I still struggle with it today. I usually have to hit a breaking point, but it doesn't come out healthy. And the cat just overwhelmed with all the things you've had to deal with and overcome.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's definitely made relationships hard too.
Well, I mean, I can imagine if you're having one of your really down days with both your quiet borderline and bipolar 2, and you're at that numb spot, it's hard as someone who's related, that wants to be with you in a relationship with you, to be able to handle that numbness.
Yeah, especially if you've never dated anyone with any of these issues, and it makes trust hard. Like I said, I don't trust people initially, and they have to work really fucking hard to get in my circle. But once you are, it's there for life. And I've always had like small group of friends, but very intimate. So you call at me at 3 a.m. and you're like, hey, we need to go to like Michigan and beat the shit out of someone. I'm like, okay, let me get my shoes.
Let me just log in and make sure that I can get the time off.
Yeah. Yeah. Or if like,
or I'm just going to call out sick.
And you're like, hey, I need you to drive up to like the Yukon and pick me up. I'm in trouble. I'm like, okay, I'll be there in Siri. How long is it to the Yukon?
Yep.
You know?
So anybody have any questions? Want to go into more detail about stuff?
I mean, if you have any, keep it, anonymous, but like if you know anybody going through any of what I've gone through, or like they're just starting to deal with it, I can give you firsthand experience insight in what has worked for me. I'm never going to tell someone, well, this is what works. I'm going to say this is what has worked for me, because everyone processes it differently. And some people choose not to. Some people choose to just bury it indefinitely, which I've not seen much success with that one.
So Tommy and they are the Porch Drunkies. They have their own podcast. Awesome. First time I was ever on a podcast was with them, and I have been trying to get with them again, but with COVID, it's kind of a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
But he just let us know that Maya has a question, so apparently she has a lot of typing right now. He's just kind of giving us a heads up.
No worries. Type as much as you need. Like I said, I'm here to share the story so that it can help.
I mean, that's the whole purpose of this entire podcast. Which I am so glad to have the kind of support that I'm getting from people, like you, from the people in the chat and the listeners and all that. The feedback has just been overwhelming. I have actually been brought to tears by some of the stuff that I've been told. I've been told that I saved someone's life with this podcast. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And you have an email for the podcast, right? If listeners have...
Oh, yeah. They can go ahead and email mentallivecast@gmail.com. You can also go onto Facebook, facebook.com/mentallivecast, and you can direct message me there. And there'll be more ways coming.
I wanted to give an open invitation. If anyone has any questions they think of in the next couple of days, or concerns, or anything about I've said or done today, maybe you can email the show, and then E will forward that to me, and then with your guys' permission, I can reach out to you directly. I just don't want to give my email out right away, but I do want to answer questions in a private manner if I can.
Right, and also if you guys wanted to, you could message me on Facebook, or you can even put your questions on the episode's comment section, because the episode is auto-published to Facebook. And then A can go ahead and give me the answer, and I'll just publish the answer. That way it comes across anonymously.
Because I don't do social media. I'm just not a social media person.
All right, so the question is here. First off, thank you for your time and sharing with us. Again, so many hugs. You mentioned that you prepared for your binges by making sure you were prepared for them with what you needed. Could someone have stopped you from going on your binge had they known? Maybe,
yes. It depends how you approached it. I've had a couple friends do that. But it would be tough, because I'm very determined, and once I make my mind up about something, it's hard to deter me. But there have been a few times when people have intervened and got me to do something else until the urge left me. Or there have been one or two times where I decided, and I called up E or some other friend, and I'm like, you guys, I'm really about to do this, and let's like get out of my head and near someone else. One time in all my years of alcoholism, I was in the aisle with the shit in my cart, and I just had the wherewithal to say like, you could just leave this cart right now and get back to your car and fucking leave, and I did, and it was the only time I was able to do it. But yeah, you have to approach the person right, and again, to the individual, you may not be able to stop them, or you might be able to, but there have been times when friends and family deterred me from going into a binge.
But don't think that you're any less of a person if you fail it to
Yeah,
turn something.
yeah, don't.
Yeah, don't
That,
beat yourself up over it. It's something that was out of your control.
yeah. And sometimes friends will start by texting. Um, if you really want to be that friend that like it really wants to deter them for their own better, don't text because it's really easy to ignore a text. And I've done that to E several times. So I'm like, I'm not going to fucking respond to that because he's going to get me into a conversation and then he's going to be like, well, you want to come over? And I'm going to be like, no, but I do.
Well, I mean, the very first time you ever came over, you barely knew me. You had just recovered from a binge.
Yeah.
And the very first thing that I did, and that my wife did, we gave you a hug, handed you a smart water, brought you into the living room, sat down, and let you just spill it out.
Yeah.
And then gave you resources to try to help you out and make sure that you're okay.
Yeah.
I practically had to break your arm to get you to come over.
Yeah.
And then I asked, how long have you been sober at this point? But if you want to go ahead, if you also want to finish with what I was saying too, either one.
Yeah.
Both.
So, yeah, I had my last binge. I wouldn't even call it a binge because my drinking habits have changed the past couple years, and my last sort of binge was in February, and it wasn't to the extent of what I usually do. It wasn't even. Usually, I just go hard liquor, and I do hard liquor, chase it with like some really fucking, like Steel Reserve, something malt liquor that's also very potent. Yeah, and it's just so I can get blasted. I don't enjoy it. I don't even enjoy being drunk. It's just at this point habitual. So it was in February, and it didn't last nearly as long, and I was actually able to stop. And if you remember earlier, when I drink and drink and drink. There is no stop. There is no moderation with me. I drink until I'm blacked out. But this time, I was actually able to stop, which was crazy. And it was only like 2 days, I think. And it was like, it wasn't any hard stuff either. That was kind of a new experience for me. And I fit it in the course of like the 2 or 3 days that I had off. And I didn't even drink till I blacked out. I just drank until I was like strong buzz, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go have a drunkie nap. So yeah, it seems to be changing, but it's not really a pattern that I care to like indulge in and like, well, let's see what happens next time, I don't want to drink, even when I am drinking. It's kind of strange.
Well, that's an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Some people keep doing what they're addicted to, knowing that they don't want to do it, and they just are powerless once it starts.
Oh, I think I might have skipped that completely. Last year, I put myself into a rehab program, and it was the best choice I ever made in any of my attempts to recover. Because I tried doing the detox by myself. I tried doing it with friends. I tried doing it with family. I tried everything except for like literally turning myself into rehab. And I went to the hospital, the ER. They gave me the fluid flush, sent me to a detox house for 2 weeks. And when I got out, I did an intensive outpatient program that lasted 8 weeks. And it was the best thing I ever did for my addiction recovery. And it also helped.
I think your group text that you sent out was probably really powerful for you too, because it was nothing but love for you while you were gone. People just kept posting their love for you, man. Yeah. And I was so happy to be a part of that, to know that when you got out, you would be able to read this just wall of love.
Yeah, and it was actually it'll be like a year in September, I think.
I think so.
Yeah, and I met a lot of really cool people in there, and learned that it's really important to have a group of support from other addicts in recovery. That's the important thing. Other addicts in recovery. And also a group of what we call normies, like people who can have a beer or people who just don't fuck around with heroin.
It's 9:00. You're not done yet?
Yeah. So yeah, it's, if you know anybody battling addiction, that alone, that's a difficult fucking road to go at, and I don't know anybody that's done it alone.
I mean, you tried. I mean, you had your support, but we could only do so much, mainly because, like, for me, I have an addictive personality, but I've never had a real addiction other than caffeine. As bad as that is, it's not destroying me like alcohol does, and I really need to get my caffeine under control. But you being able to be around other people with the same addictions and the same struggles is so much better for you than having someone like me. And I'm not trying to discount people who are friends that try to help people like you, but there's only so much that we can do.
Yeah, true. I mean, it has to, especially addiction, man. Like, if whoever is in your life is struggling with any type of addiction, save yourself a lot of trouble. And if they don't want to be helped, they're not going to be helped. The only reason why I was able to get help is because I actually wanted help. I wanted recovery. I wanted to fight it. But there were many years when I didn't want help, and I wanted to be a drunk, and I wanted to be addicted to alcohol, and I was not ready at all to face the overwhelming hurdle of the journey of recovery, because it's lifelong and it's permanent, and I still battle it sometimes. But it's true. If you have an addict that doesn't want to be helped yet, they're not, and are also not ready to be helped, they're not going to do it. Because there's a difference between, I want to get help, but I'm not ready to.
Right.
You can want it, but be in a place where you're not ready. And I was there for years. And if anyone listening is battling alcoholism, one thing that I faced when I went into the detox and the recovery program was imposter syndrome, because I thought, oh, well, shit, like, these people are here for, like, meth and fentanyl and heroin and, like, real hardcore fucking drugs. I don't belong here. I'm a drunk. That's it. And alcohol is one of the hardest things to kick, and it's dangerous too. Like, you can die from alcohol withdrawal. It's one of the few that you can die from. And every single one of them, like, even the person kicking fentanyl, which is, by the way, like, 10 times stronger than heroin, she's like, no, dude, that shit's real. Don't cheap yourself out just because your poison of choice is alcohol, mine's fentanyl. Like, you belong here.
Yep.
And the way I looked at it wasn't like, oh, I'm too good. These are addicts and meth heads. The way I thought is like, dude, there's someone waiting for my position in this seat in this room that's trying to kick, like, meth or whatever, and I'm taking up this because I can't stop drinking.
Yep.
Imposter
syndrome's a real thing. We've talked about it a number of times on this show.
Mm-hmm.
It's real. It sucks. But you deserved to be in that spot. If it wasn't you, it was just going to be somebody else that had another really destructive addiction. And that's what it ultimately boiled down to. It's a destructive addiction. Yeah.
And you know what? I still have contact with those people too, and we keep each other in check throughout the year.
Good.
In fact, this one of these little bracelets I have on my wrist here is a sobriety friendship bracelet that me and one of my addict buddies made together.
Awesome. And this is also really good because you didn't want to join a 12-step program originally because you didn't like the whole religious aspect of it. So you found another way, which is really good for the people out there that are more secular or,
and I'm so glad you mentioned that, because if you look at the beginning of the chat on this episode under addiction and alcoholism, every single one of those links is a secular link, because a lot of the reasons why people I know don't go to AA is because of the heavy, heavy, heavy religious overtones.
And that is a 12-step program.
And they say it's not religious, but, like, dude, they literally say, like, the Lord's Prayer in there. So, yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. If faith works, fucking do it, man. But a lot of friends I know refuse any sort of treatment program because they're so put off by the religious overtones. And I can't tell you how many of my friends just aren't even accepting help or even open to like going to a group because they think they're all like that. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 links in here that I put in are all secular help, which means they focus on the addiction. And some of these are pretty cool. They actually focus on like the science of it. Like, this is what's happening neurologically when you do this, and this is the loop that you create for yourself. And I like that approach.
All right, and we do have quite a few comments stacking up in here.
Sure. Go ahead.
Like Tommy first said that he was in a toxic marriage and was drinking 2 handles of tequila a day. Oof. Unfortunately, my friends were not supportive, which I fired back going, I wish I had known about this. I would have tried to help, even though my life was a mess back then. And I think he remembers my ex. Mike just keeps saying lots of hearts and love. And Tommy said no worries in that situation. He wasn't a good person. He was. He was in a bad place. I would have probably played it off and said not to worry. Then meth is a hell of a drug. I'm glad you're here, A. You are essential. Bexy, I am so glad you're still here, A.
Well, thank you. And that was... Tommy and was it Amy are the
Tommy
drunkies? Yeah,
Tommy and May.
May.
And if I'm saying it wrong again, I'm sorry. MAI. It's really.
I'm going to check out that podcast because I heard you reference him a couple times. I'll download the first couple episodes tonight and listen to him.
Yeah, if you have a podcast and you come on in my chat and I recognize your podcast, I will give you a shout out.
And I'm a big podcast junkie. So.
Oh, yes, he is. You're the one that got me to first try out podcasts, so yeah.
Yeah.
And while we have a quick break again, I did mention Rachel Conway a few times. And it's part of my, I'm trying to help out my friends. Like I said, I shout out for the Porch Drunkies. I shout out for any podcast that pop on. Shout out again also to Rachel Conway of Genuine Psychological Services. And Mission Valley and Encinitas. If you're looking for a good therapist, if you've listened to the episodes, the 2 episodes she's been on here, she's damn good. Definitely check her out. She is licensed for California, and she is working on expanding things. And she will be back in season 3.
Damn, Tommy and May, since 2015, I got some catching up to do. I just subscribed, you guys.
Yeah, I want to go back on that again. It was such a kick in the butt. It was so fun. Just sitting out on the back porch, having a couple of drinks, and just talking about wherever the conversation goes.
Cool. So, my non-alcoholic drink of favor now is Arnold Palmer. Love me some Arnold Palmer.
I love Arnold Palmer. Oh, thank you, May. You said my podcast is super important. I like to think so.
Very cool. Okay. So, again, I just want to make sure I don't get anybody's questions lost in the chat. If you don't have any, that's fine too. I know some of those questions are probably very long.
Yeah, and we are past the 2-hour mark, so...
Right. Kind of wrap it up pretty soon.
Yeah.
I know your spouse came in a bit ago, and
I think everybody heard, you're not done yet?
Yeah.
I told her this is going to be a long episode.
Yeah.
And you still have your wrap-up that you wanted to do, or have you already done that?
I think the wrap-up was mainly talking about the resources that I dumped in the chat, and I did want to leave enough at the end for all the big hard questions, because chances are if you know someone who's gone through any of what I've gone through or are dealing with what I'm dealing with, it's a lot easier to ask a stranger the questions that you want to ask your friends than to just say, hey, so how about, tell me about your PTSD. Tell me about what it is to live with like borderline personality disorder or body dysmorphic disorder or sexual abuse. It's easy to ask a stranger because we don't know each other and we have that anonymity. And
that's why you came over to my house that one time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Richard is saying, great podcast. Love the long episode. Hey, love having you here, Richard. Again, this is your first live listen. Hope that you're enjoying it.
It's a
and then
fucking tough one, huh, Richard?
Yeah. And then my is all, we stand a long podcast, LOL. Yeah. I still remember with Rachel that on the first season when we only had 45 minutes as the hard limit, that everyone was cheered on. Let's do this back-to-back episodes.
Yeah.
Yep. Judgment is hard. Judgment doesn't come from strangers. My.
Mm-hmm.
Bexy, thank you so much, for sharing, for allowing us to hear you. You've given me some insights tonight. Kat, unfortunately, the links aren't clickable. I've taken screenshots so I could type them in later. Thank you very much for all your other links. Let me double check on my... Well, I have a console area here.
Because I clicked on them as soon as I put them in there, and they led me to them.
Yeah, mine works, but I'm also using the console. How about this? Go ahead and, when this episode's done, email me the list of links, and I will go ahead and throw them up in the comment section on Facebook.
Okay. Yeah, I could have sworn. I'm going to go to the bottom. Wow, this has been a long episode. Yeah, I mean, they're clickable for me.
Not on her cell. Okay, so it might just be because of the cell phone.
Okay, the cell.
Yeah. And then Tommy, I was involved in meth and dropped it in one night for the wrong reasons, but the end result is still an accomplishment.
Hell yeah. Dude, I mean, I've done a lot of drugs once. And I'll tell you what, I know for a fact if I was to do it again, I'd be addicted. Ecstasy? Whoo, this shit was fun, but don't do it.
Yeah, that's the thing right there. That's the warning, is that some of those things can be fun, but the long-term costs, you don't want any of that.
No, I was terrified of ecstasy because I loved it so much. I will never do that shit again.
Yeah, one of my friends said that the one drug that they enjoyed the most and they were scared to death of was crack. They tried it one time, and they said it was the greatest thing they have ever tried, and they would never do it again because they knew one more time, and they would have lost their lives to it.
For sure, yeah.
And I mean, come on, just look at the movies from like the 90s, like New Jack City. That was all about crack cocaine.
Yeah. And one thing, one I did want to drop that I think if anyone's out there still listening and interested in learning some like deeper stuff about these, you know, the BPD and the quiet BPD and all this stuff, there's a YouTube channel called Med Circle, which is very informative, and it has, it's mainly accounts from like doctors who are looking at it through the professional scientific scope of things, but they give you a lot of information about what it means. So you don't have that like, I don't want to say stigma of ignorance, but like, yeah, like if you're not informed about these diseases, you should be, because it helps you understand people, and we fear what we don't understand. So if you learn about, say, schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder, you don't have to fear those people anymore, and you can realize they're, you know, people just like you and me. They just have a different battle.
And there's also a really good YouTube video that someone did trying to highlight what it's like to have a really bad episode of schizophrenia, where the idea is that you're supposed to put on headphones because it does a lot of stereoscopic stuff audibly plus visual stuff, and it really shows just how it affects schizophrenic. And then it ends with the spouse or significant other coming in and realizing that they're in a bad state and trying to help bring them into a better state. And it just showed the slow devolution of it all, too. Like the weatherman just turning to, instead of just talking about the weather, just looks at the guy and goes, "Nobody likes you." I mean, that video was powerful.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff out there, man. And the best thing we could do to be better people to each other is educate ourselves about whatever it is that person is or going through, or their walk of life, you know?
I agree. And that's, again, another part of this podcast. All right, so it looks like the chat has died down. Okay.
It's probably a good place to wrap up. It sounds like you are being called.
Yes, I am. It is time to put the kids to bed. So, again, if you feel like helping out the podcast, definitely appreciate it. It's not required. We will be doing a thing where donors will start getting special episodes once a month, invitations only. So that way, you know, the donors can come in, and the idea is to get more of an idea what you like about this podcast, what you don't like, what should change. Like, should we add some background music to these episodes? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, that way, if you're helping this podcast, let us know a little bit about your voice. I have a strong vision, but I'm not, without, compromise. And we got a couple things here. Tommy, my mom was paranoid schizophrenic and I was certified manic depressive.
Okay.
My thank you, A. Richard, good night. Kat, thank you, A. Tommy, yes, thank you, A. Bexy, good night, everyone. Kat, thank you, E. Bexy, thanks, E. You rock for doing this. Man.
Well, thank you, everyone, for sticking with this one. I know it's long and I was kind of all over the place, but
there was no
thank you
clear
for being
straight
here.
line to this.
Yeah, you can't.
You can't.
With an issue like that, you can't.
I mean, basically, a good way that I could visualize it is like a mirror that what happened to you in your childhood, with the rape by your dad, was like a rock smashing into a mirror, and then the spider webs was all the different things that came of it. You can't trace those linearly. You have to start at the middle and work outwards, and you're going to go all over the place.
That's a very, very good analogy. I like that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and maybe I can come on again. I'd like to help out however I can. And if you guys have any lingering questions, like I said, just email the show and I will answer them. Yep,
email me, DM me on Facebook. Go ahead and put it in the episode if you don't mind losing your anonymity. I mean, some of you have your profile pictures on here, and we've even had listeners become friends. Last episode, we had 2 people decide to follow each other on Facebook mid-episode.
and thank you all for listening to me and letting me share, too.
Hey, I'm glad. Thank you for coming. Seriously, I knew when I started this, I wanted you to come on the show, but I wasn't going to pressure you. It's something. This is a voluntary thing.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you came on, and the fact that you went right to the heart of it all, when at first you were kind of skirting around it, there's a lot of pride in me for you and being brave enough to do this. It takes a lot.
Yeah, there's no easy way to start any episode on the shit that I had to talk about. And all the other stuff stems from the original assault. So you got to start there.
Yeah, and everybody that's ever been a guest on the show knows you can agree to do it, but when you're facing it, you're coming up to that last 5 minutes, those butterflies start getting big.
They do. Yeah, and so I guess I want to close with something positive. So with all this that's said and done and all the battles that I'm going to be facing for the next however long, anybody who is a survival of sexual assault, even if it didn't happen when you were a kid, even if it wasn't your parents, that's a fucking tough road to take at all, let alone alone. So
even if it didn't seem like it was a lot, there was no penetration, doesn't matter.
Doesn't fucking matter. So you can survive it. You can win. And what I'm learning is, for so long I've just been surviving, and I can see it and feel it, that thriving is on my horizon, and I'm going to get there. And I'm going to get there with help from other people. I'm going to get there from help with myself, my psychiatrist, my psychotherapist, my medication, my friends and family. And you can make it through this if you want to.
That's the key.
Yeah.
All right. So everybody, see you next week. Good night.
Bye, everyone. Be good to each other. Love each other.
Absolutely.